Hello everyone, welcome again to my YouTube channel. In today's anime, we would be looking at the story of two best friends. Ryna, who was a great magician but sleeps a lot and even slept at the battlefield, had a hero king Sion as his best friend. Sion had a big dream of changing his country to become better, while Ryner was not even interested in anything of sort, rather than to sleep. When Sion met Ryner, all he wanted to do with his life was to sleep, but Sion saw in him something that was far beyond what others saw in Ryner. What was that thing Sion saw in him, and how would he help him become more of a useful person than a sleepyhead? Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button as you sit back and enjoy this amazing anime. The story begins with the narrator narrating how countless beings were said to have existed a long time ago. These beings had great power enough to control the world. They were called demon lords, devils, and dark rulers. The world was constantly at the danger of being destroyed at their hands. But there were warriors called legendary heroes who usually appeared with power far beyond the demon lords, and they would slay the monsters. People wondered who these heroes that could defeat monsters strong enough to destroy the world were. Then, they concluded that if the relics of these heroes were found, their value would be great. As to whether these so-called demon lords and heroes truly existed, the Alpha Stigma would enlighten us. Ryner, the main protagonist in the story, possessed the Alpha Stigma, meaning the eyes of the gods. At the Nelfa border, he encountered a group of soldiers who tried to use magic on him, but he retaliated using the same magic. They were shocked to see him do that. People assumed anyone with Alpha Stigma was a monster and would want to destroy them. The Nelfa armies accused him of being a spy, and they thought Roland, the country where Ryner came from, was seeking war against their country Nelfa. A lady appeared beside Ryner. Her name was Ferris. The commander of the soldiers ordered his comrades to attack them. Ryner quickly confessed that they were there to search for the relics of the hero resting in Nelfa. The soldiers refused to listen. They still attacked them. Ferris combated with them. At that moment, something strange happened. The soldiers' swords and helmet broke into pieces. The commander instantly ordered them to retreat, and they all ran away. Some group of people had been watching them from behind. The group was led by a female commander, and she ordered them to find Ryner. Ryner and Ferris rested at a point around the Nelfa-Roland border where Ferris had her favorite sweet called Dango. Ryner tried reading a map to get the location of the relics. He also used the description from the ancient writings. Ryner all of a sudden complained of feeling drowsy and wanted to take a nap. An old lady appeared behind them and asked if they were from Roland, and they answered yes. She told them how the Nelfins hated Roland, but not her. She also narrated how the kings of Roland fought wars all over in the olden days, which was pretty bad. But the revolution 2 years ago crowned a new king, and it's been pretty different. She added that the hero king, Sion Estabel, though quite young but was yet so impressive, and she's one of his fans. Ferris complained of how he had held Dango hostage to scare her, and Ryner also commented that he was a workaholic king who likes to work his best friend to the bone, and on top of that, he gave them a crap job to look for relics. But nevertheless, they agreed to get the job done. At the Roland Empire capital, the king was seen riding on a horse with his entourage. The people hailed their king and called him the Hero King. Some commented that the kingdom had grown prosperous since the new king regime. All this while, a man wearing black had been watching from behind a wall. At the Roland castle, the king was warmly welcomed as he entered. He quickly reported the ordeal at Celio region. He asked how the situation of the capital was, but Claw, one of his warriors, and a friend was worried and lamented on why he just returned, and so he needed to rest for a while and not to get straight to work. King Sion replied that he wouldn't rest as the land was just changing, and if he eased his hand, everything could be lost. Ryner and Ferris followed the description of the ancient writings and map. Then they arrived at the Nelfa forest ruins. They tried opening the gate of the ruin. Ryner used the Alpha Stigma spell on it, but it was tough. Ferris then ordered him to leave, and she wielded her sword, broke into two, and they both jumped in. The group of people led by the female commander still followed them, without them knowing. In the ruin, Ryner used the spell from the Alpha Stigma to break the trap they found on the way. Ferris scolded him and they moved forward. The group of the female commander followed them. Unexpectedly, an arrow was shot towards them, and Ferris jumped over to dodge it, and Ryner was caught in between several arrows. The female commander ran towards him. Ferris wielded her sword again, and the arrows fall off. Ferris shouted at Ryner to run, while she jumped towards the wall, hanging on her sword. He looked behind and saw a flood of water coming, but it was too late for him to escape. The flood carried him away, and even the female commander. Ferris found Ryner and the female commander lying on the rocks. They were alive. Ryner was awake, but the female commander was still yet to recover. When she woke up, she saw Ferris and Ryner, and she was quite shocked. When she saw she had been caught, she introduced herself as the leader of the Roland Empire Taboo Breaker Pursuit Squadron, Lieutenant Milk Callod. She accused Ryner of being a taboo breaker because he acquired Roland magic and left without permission. So in order to preserve the Roland magic system's secrecy, he must be put under restraint while she was ranting, and even her eyes were closed. Ferris and Ryner had walked away. She ordered them to wait, and she used her magic, which sent forth thunder and lightning at him, but he stopped it with his bare hand. She begged Ryner to follow her so he could get off easily, but they made fun of her. She got pissed up and used her true talent magic. The ball lightning moved towards the roof and it broke it. Someone quickly carried Lieutenant Milk to help her escape from the danger. It was Luke, one of her comrades. They all moved out of the ruin, but the commotion continued. King Sion was reading a letter. Someone came from behind, queried him that he was reading the letter again. The king called him Lucille. Lucille explained that the alpha stigma is a pleasant dream that a lone monster clings to as it weeps. King Sion flashed back to when they were young and still in school. He promised Ryner he would be the king of their land and change everything. He also promised him he would make a world he desired. Ryner wept bitterly. King Sion, when he was a kid, used to be bullied by others. They called him a son of a low-born dog. His mother on his sick bed would encourage him and tell him how much of a sweet child he was and how she was proud to have him. His mom told him that even if she wasn't there, he was not alone. His dog was killed and sent to him as a present. King Sion really had it tough while growing. In the time past, at the Roland Royal Special Military Academy, which was an academy that gathers orphans and children of A-class criminals, Sion and Clough were seen discussing the Academy mock battle training which was to begin soon. They were trying to assemble a team. They talked about someone who hadn't showed up for practice sessions. Sion moved out of the room. It was narrated that Ryner Lute was the bearer of the Alpha Stigma and Roland's greatest magician. He left Germer Kleisroll Training Institute for Roland Special Institute #307. He used to be called the Black-Haired Devil. Sion opened a room and entered. There he met Ryner, who had been sleeping the whole time in the library. He told him the place had closed, but Ryner, instead of leaving, he slept back. King Sion left him there, and he doubted he was Ryner, the so-called magician. On the Roland Academy exercise field, Ryner was seen having training with a fellow female student. Sion also came to watch. Ryner was always rolling on the ground with just a hit from the female student. Sion was surprised to see that it was Ryner that was behaving like a weakling. The girl asked him to stand up so they could go back to training, and then she used a magic spell on him. The spell struck him and he fell again. The girl moved closer to him, and he complained he was feeling sleepy again. The girl annoyingly gave him a slap on his head. She held his hand to help him up, and warned him his grade would be in danger if he didn't train that day. Everyone there mocked Ryner, but Sion ordered them to keep quiet. Sion moved closer to them. He noticed that Ryner saw through the last direct hit from the girl. Seeing Shin moving closer to them, Ryner asked who he was, and the girl told him he was Shin Estabel, and he was from a noble family. Sion mentioned the girl's name, Kiefer Nolis. He told her he usually tried to remember the names of excellent students, and she's a cheerful, attractive, and popular girl. Kiefer was literally blushing. Then he proposed that Kiefer join his team. Kiefer was reluctant at first, but Ryner advised her to join so he could be having his afternoon naps and not be forced to train. But Sion shocked him when he told him he wanted him to join too. He wondered why he wanted him to, knowing he had no good grades. Ryner insisted he wanted him to join them. He moved closer to him and whispered to him that he wanted him because he was a bearer of the Alpha Stigma. Then Sion threatened to expose him to everyone. At last, Sion was able to gather his team, and they headed out for their goal of eliminating their enemy. All of them smashed using their magic spell, and there was lightning and thunder. Luckily for them, they won and all made it alive. They celebrated with food and drinks, and they all slept off, couldn't sleep. He stayed outside looking so sad. Sion joined him and asked him why he joined the academy. Ryner told him he'd looked it up already. He affirmed it and then explained that he knew he grew up in the Roland Special Institute orphanage. It was an institute to raise children orphaned by war. They used to gather children and gave them thorough military drilling. Then they would put them in the front line during battles. But suddenly the war ended, and the institute lost his purpose. The orphans they faced with tough choice to remain under military command or be silenced through murder. He chose to enter Royal Special Military Academy instead. Sion asked him if he was willing to take revenge against their country for shunning him as taboo just for his alpha stigma and against the king and nobles that oppressed the weak. He then promised Ryner he would create a world he desired if he became the king. Sion was pursued by some group of men in black. He got caught up in a place where he couldn't run anymore. One of the men was about to attack him when a girl sucking dango suddenly came to his rescue. She said his brother had tasked him not to permit criminal actions in that area, and that was why she came. The girl fought with them all, and they retreated. The girl asked Sion to buy her dango in return for rescuing him. Sion got the dango from an old lady's shop. The lady directed him to the girl's house and told him she was from Eris family. Sion wondered why a person from Eris family, which was a distinguished sword clan family appointed with guarding the royal family, decided to rescue him. Sion met up with the girl. The girl's name was Ferris. Sion asked her why she rescued her, and she told him it was because her brother ordered her to. She as well asked him why his brother chose to protect him. Then he narrated his story. He told her his father was a famous nobleman, while his mom was just a commoner. His birth was unwanted, so he was separated from his father when he was young, but his mother raised him with love. He had to endure restless bullying, and his mother died. His brothers from a different mother also hated him, and one of them now was trying to kill him. He asked Ferris to help him find the person. Ferris agreed and told him she would hire a henchman, and in exchange she told him he would be delivering 2 sets of dango to her henceforth. He agreed. Sion asked that he meet her brother, but she told him he would only meet him when his brother felt like. Ferris had a little sister called Iris. She told her she would be her henchman starting the next day. Iris was quite excited about it, and she promised to do her best. Sion was in class with other students when two students rushed in and announced to him that the kingdom of Estabel, their neighboring country, had invaded their land, and so war was going to start again. That year, Estabel had a long, rainy season, and their main river flooded. Now, they were facing an unprecedented food shortage. They were trying to over their food crisis by hiring more soldiers and invading neighboring lands. At that moment, two soldiers came in and announced that they dispatch. He ordered all the students to advance to the front line the next morning. Ferris and Iris had caught the man that ordered Sion to be killed. After they had tortured him, he confessed that Sion would really be dying soon as they had set a trap to get him killed. They had assembled were 50 Estabel magic knights on the Roxanne plains to get rid of him. Sion and other students were on their way to the battlefield. The man continued that they had planted a spy among his friend, and so Sion would not escape death. Ferris and Iris were still in the man's room while he continued to expose the trap he had set up for Sion. Iris angrily hit him and he knocked out. Brother also arrived at the scene and chopped off the man's head. He told Ferry they needed to do a thorough job as Eris' family. Their family only served the true king, so they would needed to wait and see if Sion was a real king if he made it alive after he had faced the troop of 50 magic knights. He added that he carried something fascinating. Sion and other students had gathered at the Estabel border vicinity. They were trying to pitch their tent, but Ryner was just lying down lazily. They tried to get Kiefer's attention, but she just walked away. Others thought Ryner had wronged her, so they pushed him to her so they could talk. But he rather slept beside her and said he wanted to take an afternoon nap. Kiefer asked Ryner to run away with her because she really do care for him and didn't want him to die in the battle. Ryan just laughed it off and said she wasn't supposed to joke at a time like that. Kiefer apologized for not being able to protect him. She then stood up and used her magic spell, and there was lightning in the sky. She walked away, leaving Ryner behind. Ryner just watched her as she go. Before he could know it, a dead man corpse was thrown at him. The war begun when they least prepared for it. The Estabel magic knights attacked them. Sion ordered everyone to retreat and run into the woods. Sion and Ryner were seen hiding behind the woods. Sion wanted to go to the battlefield to save Kiefer and other survivors, but Ryner objected. They were also attacked, and then they began to run. One of the attackers used magic spell to accelerate, and he caught up with them. He held Sion by his head. Instantly, Ryner summoned his magic spell too and retaliated the attack with the same magic. Sion was then released. The Estabel soldiers realized that he was able to use their magic because he was an alpha stigma bearer. Ryner used the magic spell again, and the attackers retreated. Sion angrily asked why he didn't use the magic sooner. Then he told him it's been 7 years since he used it. Another Estabel magic knight descended and struck Ryner. They had been surrounded by several soldiers. Ryan lost consciousness, but they identified that he was an alpha stigma bearer. Ryner regained consciousness. The soldier told him they had killed other students, except for Sion and Kiefer that were already held hostage. They wondered why he was still calm after all they said. They wanted him to get angry so he could show his alpha stigma magic. Then they began to hit Sion badly and stripped Kiefer naked. Ryner's eyes changed and began to emit light, and there was darkness everywhere. Some strange voice echoed in his head to destroy everything and kill everyone. Ryner still looked the same physically, but a lot had gone wrong in his head. One of the soldiers moved closer to him. Suddenly, the soldier's whole body scattered like a sand, and the man holding Ryner released him immediately. All the Estabel magicians attacked him, but he stopped it with his bare hand. His eyes had completely turned red, and he was ready to destroy everyone. After he had destroyed all the Estabel soldiers, he moved close to Sion and Kiefer. He lifted them up and strangled their neck. Sion found a means to struck him and he fell off. He closed his eyes with his hand and Ryner lost consciousness. There was light again everywhere, and Sion called Ryner's name severally until he came back to life. At the Roland Empire capital, Sion was seen riding a horse while everyone hailed him as a war hero. But the nobles were not happy at all. All the students that died in the battle were buried at the academy. Ryner was arrested and was punished by the Roland nobles. He asked if Kiefer was alive, then they told him she had been thrown into prison. He was told how Kiefer's sister was killed as a spy, and how her younger sister was asked to remain with them as a sign of her loyalty to their country. But the sister had died long ago, though she wasn't aware of it. Ryner was severely beaten, and he began to bleed. They were disappointed that Sion survived since he was their real target. Ryner was taken to the same cell where Kiefer was. Then, he informed her that her younger sister was dead. She wept bitterly. Ryner wondered why there had to be war. He said he'd rather take afternoon naps. He wished there could be a place he could just take afternoon naps without having to hurt anyone or going through troubles of changing any country. A soldier came to summon Kiefer out of the prison. He told her Ryner signed a deal to release her while he stayed in prison in her stead. Kiefer was touched by his kind gesture, and she kissed him. She then left with the soldier. Sion came to visit Ryner in prison, and he offered Ryner a key he would use to escape from the prison. But he refused and said he would prefer staying in the prison and having his afternoon naps. Ferris was surprised at how Sion survived the war. Ferris asked him why he came, and he told her he was summoned. Her brother appeared under a tree and told her he was the one that summoned him. He introduced himself as Lucille Eris, the head of House Eris. He told him he called him so he could ask him questions to know if he was the suitable king or not. He said if he doesn't like one of his answers, he's going to kill him. Sion then realized that Eris House, who had served generations of king, wanted to test him. Lucille told him they gave equal rights to every prince even if he was lowborn. Ryner was enjoying staying in prison. He asked that the warder bring him books from the military library, at least 30. Then he began to write report on them. He kept asking for more books until his cell almost turned to a library. Ryner became friend with the warder, and he's fond of talking about his wife and little daughter with Runa. He also told him how he was once a soldier 7 years ago, but had to settle as a warder because all his friends died in war, and he had no regrets doing that. Sion came to visit Ryner late in the night, and he handed over all the reports he had written to him. The warder came to Ryner looking depressed. Surprisingly, Ryner had spent 2 years in prison already. He opened the prison gate, and Ryner followed the warder, who was already weeping. When they got outside, Ferris was already waiting for him. He appreciated the warder, and he left with Ferris. While Ryner and Ferris walked through the wilderness, Ryner decided to fight with Ferris, thinking she was taking her to be executed. He used his magic spell against her, but she broke through it all without any magic but her sword. Ryner was amazed how she skillfully wielded her sword, and wasn't even hurt from all the magic spell he used on her. Ryner surrendered and just followed her. Ferris took him to meet with the new king. Ryner's heart almost jumped out of his mouth when he saw that Sion was now the new king. He decided to take a nap again before the king. The king told him about Kiefer, and he raised his head. He told him Kiefer had left the country and she asked him to take care of him. Sion bought out Ryner's report, which he gave him while he was in prison. He titled it, How to Build a Kingdom of Afternoon Naps. What a silly title. But the content was quite fascinating. He wrote about relics of the legendary heroes and using their incredible power to eliminate wars across the world. Sion sat on his throne and commanded Ryner to travel all over the world and gather the heroes' relics from that time on. Ryner, as expected, refused, but Sion didn't mind him. He also ordered Ferris to accompany him as his assistants. Ryner told him he only wrote the reports to pass away time in the prison, but Sion declared to him that if he didn't follow his orders, he would be given death penalty. Ryner also opposed the king and told him she was only assisting him on his brother's order. Sion clarified he had received support from Lucille, her brother, and in his word he said that if she disobeyed, the Dango shop would be crushed on the spot. On hearing that, she pointed her arrow at Ryner and threatened him. When he wasn't cooperating in time, Ferris dragged him out. Ferris and Ryner traveled to Nelfa for their mission. They visited the ancient library at Nelfa, and they met an old man who was the librarian. A man with 2 kids was being attacked by 2 men. Ryner, on hearing their voice, came to their rescue. He asked the little girl to give him the book he was holding, but Ferris came and hit him with her sword, claiming he was trying to abduct the little girl. The man asked who they were. The librarian called him Lord Toll. While in the library, Ryner ordered Toll around to pick books for him. The librarian made it clear to him that Toll was the grandson of Lord Grade Nelfi, Emperor of Imperial Nelfa, so he had no right to order him about. Ryner wasn't even listening. He kept ordering the gentleman Toll around. This got the librarian angry, but Toll, calling him by his name, Uncle Gainel told him never to mind since he was only an abandoned child. He said because his mother was of low-born descent, he and his siblings were confined to a single estate. Ferris and Ryner visited Toll's apartment. He offered them food to eat. Ryner felt sorry for Toll and said he must have had it rough. Ryner was thinking it was tough for both Sion and Toll. A little girl suddenly flew in. It was Ferris's sister, Lelris, and she attacked Ryner. Ferris also joined the scene, and she stopped the attack. Iris explained to her that she would be the point of contact between them and King Sion. The nobles reported before the king and asked him to visit Imperial Nelfa in order to make peace with them. Cloth told King Sion that the trip was a trap to kill him. And also there are some people in Nelfa that were connected to the nobles of the anti-king faction. When they both entered the king's court, they met a man dressed in black who had been trailing the king before now. They asked who he was. Then he told them his name was Moran Froode, a lieutenant colonel in the Roland Imperial Army. He said he heard that the king was secretly gathering talent in order to counter the nobility, so he came to join. The king told him he heard of him before he said he was an orphan purchased by House Froode. He pleaded with Sion to take him. The king accepted with no hesitation. While the king, Cloth, and Froode were all seated, they talked about the trip to Nelfa. Froode suggested that the king travel to Nelfa, and he could use that chance to round up the entire anti-king faction. The king chose to go to Nelfa with Froode alone. The king visited Nelfa and he was warmly welcomed by the king of the land. He told King Nelfa that he wanted to enjoy a long period of fellowship with Imperial Nelfa. Prince Starnell, a prince from Nelfa Kingdom, rejected Sion's words and spoke rudely to him, but his father scolded him and apologized on his behalf. King Sion visited Ryner and Ferris at Toll's place. They sat together to eat. Sion had already told Toll that he was Ryner's cousin. Ryner wanted to disclose Sion's identity, but Ferris stylishly stopped him by stepping on his feet. He understood and then complied. King Sion told the both of them he had a favor to ask from them. Frode was able to capture the ringleader of those planning to kill the king at Nelfa. He reported that Prince Starnull was in charge of the plot. King Sion told him he would disclose it to King Nelfa so he could punish him. Frode came to Toll resident. He met Ryner and Ferris and he mistook Ryner for Toll. He wanted to kill Toll because he didn't want him to be the king of Nelfa. He and Ryner fought with different magic. Frode then realized that Ryner was not Toll. He fought against Ferris too, and he defeated her, though she didn't die. Ryner detected that Frode was wearing a ring, which was the source of his magic. Ferris woke up and she told him the ring must be in hero relics. Frode left the scene and promised them they would meet again. Cloth couldn't gather much information about Frode like the king ordered him. Cloth told him Frode was a dangerous person and he needed to remove him immediately. Frode opened the door, then Cloth left. Frode asked if the king was going to dismiss him, but he told him he did an amazing job for him in Nelfa, so he would not dismiss him, though he was a strange person. He promised to serve the king diligently. Ferris and Ryner left Toll residence without informing him. They continue their journey in search of the hero's relics. The female commander, Milk Khalid, and his group were also searching for Ryner to arrest him for being a taboo breaker. Ryner and Ferris were at the Nelfa Fortress interior treasure storage, still in search of the hero's relics. Ferris pointed her sword on Ryner's head as he searched the box, which was full of papers. Ferris concluded there wasn't any hero relics in the place. Ryner brought out the map again and checked where the hero's relics would be located around the fortress. Then, he told him it was around the place they camped the day before. He said if they couldn't spot the relics, that means someone had taken it, or they would need to dig the ground to get the relics. He complained it was going to be a big hassle digging up a relic from thousands of years ago. Ferris raised her sword to finish him up since he's not willing to get the job done, but he quickly begged her and told her he would do it. While they were at it, they heard voices. A man and a girl entered. The little girl alerted his brother that the treasure was in front of them, but their opposition looked tough, so they should be ready to flee at any time. The two of them began to act funny. The man's name was Sui, while the girl's name was Ku. They asked for their own portion of the treasure, and checked the box too. When they couldn't find anything, they left the fortress, in the Imperial Nelfa Inn where Lieutenant Khalid Milk and her comrades lodged. They gathered to eat. Then, one of them, whose name was Lear, looked sad. He said they hadn't recorded any success since they moved to the town. Khalid Milk promised they would try their best. Ryner and Ferris were at the Nelfa forest. Ryna dug up the ground while Ferris sat down watching him. Khalid and her squadron followed them to the forest. She gave them orders to capture Ryner. She posed an attack against Ryner with her magic spell, but Ryner did the same. Khalid appeared in front of Ryner. She fought with her and her squadron and tied them all with a ropel. Ferris asked Ryner if he knew them, but Ryner was quiet. Khalid reminded him that they were from the same orphanage and that he promised to marry her, but Ryner denied ever knowing her. They left them behind and walked away. Ryner continued to dig the ground in search for the relics. Ryner wondered why he had to get chased around by Khalid and her squadron if they were really sent by the king Sion. While they were still talking, Ryner found the sword, which was a hero's relic. He picked it up and analyzed it using the alpha stigma, but the alpha stigma couldn't get a read on it. The Nelfa army was approaching Khalid and her squadron. They thought if they shouted, they might help them, and they would be granted permission in their pursuit of the taboo breaker. Khalid, on the other hand, was trying to devise a means of saving Ryner. Her squadron awaited her order, but surprised, she shouted and insisted she wanted to pee. The soldiers overheard them and moved close, but Ryner obstructed them with a magic spell. Ferris slain some of the soldiers. Ryner moved closer to Khalid and asked if she was all right. She was worried Ryner might be caught. Ferris moved close to them and told Ryner they must protect Khalid and others, but the Nelfa soldiers were too many. She asked him to make use of the hero sword they had found, but Ryner did not know how to use it. Ryner tried to devise a means of using the relics, but he still couldn't. Ferris called out for Ryner to help with the fight. When he didn't know what to do with the sword, he threw it behind the soldier. Something strange happened where he threw the sword. Everywhere went dark, and a huge dragon with feathers appeared. The soldiers retreated and ran for their lives. Ryner and Ferris, not knowing what to do with the dragon, walked away and they left Khalid and her group behind. Khalid was sad she betrayed her squadron, but the men asked her not to blame herself. They reminded her of what she said on the day the squadron was formed. Flashback to that day was revealed. Captain Khalid and her squadron stood before King Sion and accepted the mission of pursuing the taboo breaker. King Sion warned them that the job is a dirty one, however in the future they might use that reason to single out. Khalid narrated how she had once given up on life and how she wanted to run away from her reality. But a boy, a childhood friend of hers, gave her the courage to live, and she intended to repay the boy one day and wanted to protect Roland where she met the boy. And that was why she accepted the mission. Back to the present, Captain Khalid's squadron told her that they had vowed to stick with her no matter what, so she shouldn't trouble herself, and even if she committed an error, they would correct it. Khalid became excited again. King Sion was in the Roland meeting room with the nobles. They questioned him on how he was going to handle the revolt from Estabel, which only came to their notice 2 days ago. The king said countermeasures had already been arranged, as they had done research on the ringleader of the revolt, and that was Lady Noa N, the only daughter of the old king of Estabel. He ordered Frode to pass the information he had gathered. He then explained that the Estabel side had roughly 50,000 soldiers. Frode said he would be taking army to guide each territory and suppress the revolt. King Sion objected that and told him Cloth would be the one to handle the revolt. Cloth accepted the order immediately. The king ordered Frode to take care of information gathering and dissemination and offer Cloth counsel. He reluctantly agreed. Frode questioned King Sion on why he did. King Sion told him he knew he planned the revolt. He sparked revolt among interested parties and made a clean sweep of all anti-Roland forces at once. So he wanted to use the war as an excuse to send soldiers to every territory and pry into the misdeeds of the nobles of the anti-king faction. At the Estabel army frontline fortress, Princess No of Estabel Kingdom lamented that his father was still in Roland. Salawel, her guard, explained that her father, the king, had sold his kingdom readily in exchange for status and safety given by Roland. The princess told him the people would have been happier if the revolt was led by her father. Salawel assured her she was loved by the nobles and the people greatly. The princess confessed she was afraid of what would happen if they didn't win the battle. She added that Roland treated the people of Estabel well, so she didn't see the need for fighting them. Salawel told her the fight was necessary to save the historic Estabel from Roland. She claimed that was Salawel had taught her that while she was still a kid. Flashback to when Princess No was still a kid was revealed. She gladly explained the kind of kingdom she wanted to Salawel. She told him he wanted a kingdom where everyone can live with a smile and everyone would be happy. Salawel assured her she could do it. The princess announced to her people that they would henceforth do battle with Roland and take back Estabel independence. The people were excited. One of the soldiers announced to the king that the battle had begun. The battle commenced at Count Creade's territory castle. Cloth led the Roland army. Their enemies were roughly 8,000 to 9,000. He commanded the army to advance, and they obeyed. The fight began, but Cloth targeted the commander of the Estabel army. He killed him when he sighted him. He then proposed to the Estabel army to stop the battle amicably, but if they didn't, he would kill them all, just like their commander. One of the Estabel soldiers went back to relay the message to the princess and the nobles. The princess was impressed with what Cloth did, but the nobles convinced her that they were only deceiving them. The situation of the battle was also reported to King Sion. Cloth received a letter from the Estabel. The content of the letter was read by Salawel. They should withdraw the Roland army and release all war prisoners, and if they didn't heed their wishes, the people of Estabel will be beheaded on the spot. Salawel explained to the princess that the king of Roland couldn't stand by and let commoners die, so held the people of Estabel a hostage in order to protect the princess. This didn't sit well with the princess, but Salawel told her that was what the people wanted. The princess was disappointed in herself and see herself as a puppet ruler. One of the soldiers came to announce to Cloth that the Roland soldiers were attacking the Estabel fortress. Cloth was surprised because their squadron was assembled with him, and he wondered who the squadron that attacked Estabel soldiers were. Then, he sensed it must be Froaud pulling his stunt again. The princess said he would prefer to die alone, but Salawel said he would rather die with her. Froaud had joined the scene. He was asked who he was, and he introduced himself. They asked how he gained access there, but he ignored them. He began using his magic spell on them, and he killed everyone except for Salawel and the princess who escaped. Salawel entered a building with the princess. The princess was bitter that he had lost everyone and even the kingdom, but Salawel told her that it's good she's alive as she was the one commanding the riot. And now, he would be the one to kill the rioting princess had started and end the battle. Salawel was actually a traitor. He wanted to soil the princess's reputation so that people would see him as the savior. The princess wanted to kill him, but he took the sword from her and intended to kill her. But Frode came to her rescue. The princess then realized Frode was the one that conspired with Salawel to plan the revolt. Frode added that according to their plan, the story would have ended that she committed suicide after she had killed all the hostages. Came in, and he wanted to attack Frode, but he dodged it. The princess promised to persuade her people and the soldiers to follow Roland so that the war would end. Ryner and Ferris returned to the Nelfa forest where they found a sword which was a hero relic. Unknown to them, many of the villagers had been slaughtered in the forest, but strangely there was no blood on them. They saw the guy and the little girl they met at the Nelfa fortress interior treasure storage, Sui and Ku. They moved close to them and asked what they were doing there. They said they were there to see the rumored dragon. They tried to put on an act to deceive them, but Ferris sighted the hero relic sword behind him. Knowing they had been caught, he explained that they visited the fortress for the same goal as theirs. They too were after hero relics. They added that Ryner and Ferris discovered the hero relic, but they abandoned it for them. According to Ferris, These duo killed everyone who saw the dragon in order to silence them so that fewer people would know of the existence of the hero relics. Sui told them they would as well kill the two of them. Sui and Ryner fought against one another using different magic spells while Ferris and Ku also fought. Ryner saw the scythe with Ku, and he knew it was another hero relic that could raise its wielder's physical capabilities. The scythe was also used to slaughter the villagers, and that was why there was no blood on them. Sui also saw that Ryner was an alpha stigma bearer. He showed them a crystal that could be used to crystallize alpha stigma and take it away from him. Sui showed them how to use the hero's relic sword they abandoned. He struck himself with the sword, and his hand changed to a dragon and brought forth fire that consumed almost everywhere. Ryner then realized the weapon was called Dolueli Sword Scale. The weapon could burn target as the user will. Ryner cast another magic spell on Sui, but he used another hero relic called Ku's Alachrono Scythe to destroy it. Sui and his sister had gathered quite a number of hero relics: Dolueli Sword Scale, and the Alemio Comb. All these weapons had divine power which nullifies magic. Seeing the weapons they had, Ryner and Ferris decided to retreat. He threw the crystal at Ryner. Suddenly, a voice began to echo in Ryner's head. The voice told him to destroy everything. Sui explained that the Alpha Stigma can only be stolen if he first awoken it. Alpha Stigma was a taboo because when it got out of control, it destroys everyone and everything. Ryner began to recall the time he had transformed to a monster. He told Ferris to run away from her and not look into his eyes. Ryner struggled so hard not to transform to a monster, but he couldn't help it. Ferris annoyingly ran towards Sui to attack him, but he was stopped by Ku with the scythe sword. Ryner ran wild and was ready to rain destruction. Sui tried to nullify Ryner's magic using the Alemio Comb, but strangely the weapon vanished, and Sui's hands scattered. Sui said Ryner was not an ordinary Alpha Stigma bearer. Sui asked his sister to run away. Ryner had turned to a monster completely and he destroyed almost everything. Ryner reviewed when he was a kid and was with his friends. A group of soldiers came by and killed one of his friends. Ryner's eyes changed to Alpha Stigma and the soldiers ran away. Everyone, including his friend, couldn't move close to him. They called him a monster that was supposed to be killed. Ferris and Ryner were left at the scene. Ryner was still in his monster state, but he could still hear people when they talk. Ferris told Ryner he read the report he gave to King Sion, and there was a certain page in it where he wrote that he hated people dying and being killed. He wrote that he didn't like to see people cry or cry himself. Ferris said he thought he was only a lazy and sleepyhead whom she doubted could ever possibly kill her. Ferris began to say pacifying words that could make him come back to normal. She reminded him how he confessed he was tired of killing and destroying people. Ferris ran towards him. She was able to nullify the magic spell. She was about covering his eyes when Ryner strangled her neck. She shouted that he was not a monster. Tears flew down Ryner's eyes. Ferris struggled until her hand reaches his face. Then she covered his eyes. Ryner calmed down and it began to rain. Ryner asked Ferris to go back to Roland and leave him behind as the journey was over. Ferris told him she didn't see him as a monster since he couldn't kill her, a single woman. So he's just a coward. Princess No had been living in the Roland court. She and Cloth get along well and they had planned to have dinner together that night. Duke steered one of the nobles of the court called Frode over and proposed that he joined forces with him to overthrow the king. Frode disappointed him when he told him he would only stick to King Sion, who is a true ruler, because he allowed the weak and the strong to coexist within him. Then he asked Duke Steered to rather join his forces with his king. After Princess No and Cloth had finished dinner, the Princess No departed to her apartment. When she entered her room, she was attacked by some group of men. They stripped her naked. Cloth, while on his way, heard someone screamed his name. Then he sensed the princess was in trouble, and he quickly ran back to her. Cloth entered her room, and he was attacked too. He switched on the light and saw Princess No from afar, stripped naked and was crying. Cloth became angry and fought with the men fiercely. Ryner and Ferris moved through the forest. Then they saw a little girl being attacked by a man. They rescued the girl, but she pleaded that they save Aura too. She said he was not a monster, that they were wrong about him. Reported to King Sion that Princess No was attacked, but Cloth saved her. Frode explained to the king that Princess No was attacked because Roland and Estabel were following a path of reconciliation, and that was because Princess No was alive. If she dies, then revolt would be inevitable. Then the nobles would target King Sion. Frode advised the king to ingratiate himself with the nobility. He should accept them and feed them with sweet honey to get them lower their guard, then he would slaughter them all. Frode said he had everything in place, just that he awaited the order from the king. King Sion asked Frode if he had no hand in Lady No attacked, and he confessed he didn't. Ryner and Ferris were seen at the Runa Empire frontier. They saw a group of magic knights of Runa with a boy tied round a wood. Then they knew the boy was Arua. Lieutenant Milk Kalad and his squadron appeared before Major Miller. They thought he would be mad at they because they failed their mission. He read their report from the mission. They stated that the taboo breaker was out of their league. Major Miller called aside Luke, one of the squadron that followed Kalad for the mission. He told him that Ryner was quite troublesome than they expected. They also talked about King Sion's plan to get rid of the corrupt nobles. He also mentioned how Captain Kalad was treated badly in the house of the Kalad when she was taken from the orphanage. She was in the same orphanage with Ryner when they were kids. She went through a rigorous training because the house House Kalad wanted to demonstrate their power among the military. Captain Milk never enjoyed simple happiness in that house. They concluded that she must not remain in the country so she would not get involved in the turmoil that was about to happen. Ryner and Ferris were still at the Runa Empire frontier. They watched as they tortured the boy, Arua, and called him a devil. They kept stepping on the boy, and Ryner couldn't hold it anymore. He wanted to attack them. Ferris had to calm him down that they needed to plan first. Arua's mother was killed, and he wept bitterly. Ryner left Ferris when he couldn't hold it anymore. The knights told Arua his mother had to die because she gave birth to a devil like him. Then they intend to kill his father too. His father told him not to worry even if he was killed, and he should know his mother did not die because of him. Ryner suddenly attacked them, and he killed many of their soldiers. Ferris also came behind him and introduced Ryner as Wild Beast who attacks men and women indiscriminately. They attacked him, but he used his magic spell on them. They returned the same, but Ryner dodged it. The fight continued between them and the Magic Knights. Arua's dad struggled to hold Arua's hand so they could escape, but one of the knights struck him and he died right in front of Arua's face. The pain was too much for Arua to bear. His eyes turned to alpha stigma bearers, and was about to go wild, but Ryner stopped him. They carried Arua with them, and they walked away. Ryner laid Arua on his thighs and he cried bitterly. He wondered why a person of his such had to suffer that way when they didn't even choose to be born as a monster, nor do they chose to have such eyes. Then it began to rain. Ferris watched him pitifully and wept too. Ryner was seen resting under a tree at Runa Empire Territory Forest, while Arua was lying beside him. Ferris was nowhere to be found, and Ryner imagined where she went. Ferris arrived and he hit Ryner's head with the head of her sword. Ferris jokingly said that his abandoned son has come to him all the way for his support. She asked how he intended to take responsibility as a father. Ferris had gotten a carriage to help carry Arua. Runa accused her that she stole it from the nobles. She said it didn't matter that he should just put the boy in the carriage. He commented that Ferris was surprisingly considerate, knowing he couldn't carry Arua all the way to the town of Rigit. Ryner placed Arua in the carriage and Ferris rode away, leaving Ryner behind. Ryner ran after her. Cloth reported to King Sion that he received notification that in the Akame region, there was growing unrest among the nobles at the House Froad's territory. The nobles had gathered at the Akame region Froad Manor, entered a room, and he met an old man inside whom he called Father. He informed him the guests had gathered. Froad was quite impressed with Father. He was able to gather all the renowned figures across the world in a hall with just a word. His father commended his efforts too, that things wouldn't have gone so smoothly if not for him. His father said lovely words to him and he appreciated him. In the hall where the nobles gathered, Frood's father was seated while Frood stood beside him. Frood appreciated all of them for coming and he informed them that the organizer of the banquet were Duke Styrid and his father Carlal. Carlal, Frood's father, stood up to address the nobles. Every doors leading to the hall were suddenly shut, but none of them showed concern. Carlal talked about the purpose of their gathering, which was to teach Astal Sion, their king, a lesson for slighting the nobility. Someone from the gathering echoed that he should be dethroned since he was just a child of a low-born dog, even though he was a royal lineage. Carlal added that if they leave someone like him in charge, the country would be doomed. He faced Froad and ordered him to share his plans to them in details. Froad shut his eyes and stayed quiet for a while. Duke Styrid was sighted stepping backward. When Froad opened his eyes, he stepped forward and said there was something he would want them to do at first. He asked them to please die, cast his magic spell on them, and slaughtered every one of them, even those that were trying to escape through the door. Now, Frood was left with his father, who was already sitting on the floor. He told him he had anticipated such a day like that since he came to him. He talked about how the members of the Frood house had perished one after the other. Then he confessed he killed every one of them. He cast his magic spell again on his father, and he was also slaughtered. Frood killed the entire nobility of the nation except for Duke Styrid that he spared. Frood thanked the Duke for his cooperation, but he reminded him not to betray him, and he vowed never to betray him. Unexpectedly, Duke Styrid was strangled by a magic spell from behind and he fell off. Frood, who had been backing him, turned to see what had happened. Then he saw a strange guy standing. Frood asked this strange man who he was, that he was able to survive his magic spell. The guy failed to introduce himself. Surprisingly, he had the same ring as Frood, the same weapon similar to Frood's own. He promised he's going to take Frood's ring, and then the duel began between these two. There was lightning and thunder, and everywhere was shook as they cast their magic spell against each other. This strange man brought out a crystal and threw it at Frood. He was able to escape, leaving Frood behind in the closed hall. Frood was helpless as his power had become weak. Luckily for Frood, Cloth came to his rescue just in time. He held his hand, and they both ran out of the hall. A blue flame ran after them, but Cloth stopped it. The whole building collapsed, but the both of them survived. When they are confident that they were saved, Cloth sat on the floor. Frode asked why he came, and he replied that he came on orders from Sion. He asked why he came alone. He told him he came with soldiers, but he came ahead of them. Cloth said the way Frode did his things in secret was quite annoying, that he felt like punching his face. Frode thanked him for saving him, as he might have died of. He didn't come to his rescue at that time. Cloth asked him what the blue flame was. He told him he didn't know either, but it seemed their war had already begun. A soldier came to report it to the king that Cloth and Frode were heading to the castle. He dismissed him, and the soldier left. Suddenly, beasts of lightning wanted to attack the king, but Lucille Eris, Ferris's brother, came from behind and addressed it. Then it vanished. The king asked if they should capture it, but Lucille said the king should decide. The king suggested they leave it. Lucille informed the king that an upheaval era is coming, but he believed the country would survive with a king like him. Lucille vowed he was going to kill him if he couldn't protect the country, and he would crown a new, more competent king. Sui and his sister Ku came to visit Runa Empire king. They killed all his guards. Then they proposed that he joined hands with their empire, the Gastark Empire. Sui revealed how Runa king had joined hands with Duke Styrid to overthrow the Roland's current king, but he informed him that their companion had killed Duke Styrid. He told the king they would give him time to think about it, and so they would be waiting for his response. Ku reminded Sui they would be heading to town Rigit to find a kid with an alpha stigma. The Runa magic knights were pursuing Ryner and Ferris. They had Arua in the carriage. Ryner stopped them with his magic spell. Ryner had decided to go get Cuckoo, the girl that begged them to save Arua, and then take the both of them out of town Rigit, to a place where they could live peacefully. Frode had killed all the nobles across the nation, including Carlal, his father. He met his counterpart, who had the same weapon as his, and he fought him seriously to the point of death, but he was saved by Claw. Ryner and Ferris had Arua, an alpha stigma bearer, with them, and they were being pursued by the Runa magic knights on their way to town Rigit. Ryner had decided he would take Arua and Cuckoo, the girl that begged them to save Arua, to a place where they could live peacefully. King Sion was attacked in his palace by beasts of lightning, but Lucille addressed it. Sui and his sister visited the king of Runa and proposed that he joined hands with their empire, Gastark. Sui and his sister Ku were also on their way to Rigit to get a kid with an alpha stigma. 4 years ago, in the royal castle town, Kiefer, who was just 13 years old at that time, she was with her elder sister Naya and little sister, Lamille, in the market. Her little got them sweet, and Naya patted her head. Suddenly, Roland army confronted them and claimed they were a group of Estabel spies. Naya quickly ordered Kiefer to take Lamille and get out of there. One of the soldiers cast a magic spell, and everywhere went dark. Kiefer fell on their way, and her sister asked her to hurry out of the place. Naya also cast her magic spell, but the soldiers were too many for her to defeat. Kiefer kept running with Lamille, and they got to a safe place where they rested. Lamille asked Kiefer if Naya would be okay. Kiefer assured her that they would meet her at the border. Suddenly, the soldiers appeared before them, and one of them carried Naya, their older sister's head, and he showed them to let them know Naya had died. Kiefer and Lamille wept bitterly. The soldier smashed Kiefer's head on the wall, and the other held Lamille on the neck. Kiefer begged them to release Lamille and promised she was going to do anything they asked of her. A Roland nobleman walked in and called her a cursed Estabel spy. He asked her if she was going to betray her country for her little sister. 2 years ago, Kiefer was seen in the Roland Royal Special Military Academy. She watched Ryner sleeping, and she admired him. She then told herself she had no right to admire him since she was going to betray him. Ryner woke up, yawned, and stretched himself. Kiefer told him he sleeps too much. Ryner and Ferris arrived at the Runa Empire territory. Ryner complained he was feeling sleepy, but Ferris hit him and told him sleep. Driving was strictly prohibited. Behind, seeing that Arua was still sleeping. At the Imperial Stol Foy's village during the time when there was war, Kiefer was a soldier. Her captain asked her to run away, but she told him there was still ordinary people there that she wanted to save. The captain asked him to forget about it, that the Gastark army would be there soon. The military nation of Stol boasts the greatest strength in the Minoris continent. Kiefer saw lightning of arrows coming from the sky, moving towards the direction of 2 kids hiding in a place. She covered them so that they would not be hurt. Again, another lightning of arrows were sent to them. Kiefer remembered how he was with Ryner at the Roland Academy, and how she had kissed him in prison. Then she decided she wouldn't die. She cast her magic spell, but the lightning deflected it. Someone suddenly appeared and nullified the lightning. He was king of Gastark, Rifaladea. He queried her for staying in a village that had already been abandoned by the Stol. Kiefer said she hated war. The king wondered why a soldier would hate war. He said he hated war too, and he told Kiefer to watch, as he would show her an opening. 2 soldiers came to inform the king that the preparations were in order. The king moved forward and said he hated war, blood, tears, and every sad thing. But as long as nations exist, there would always be war. But he always considered ways to reduce casualties. He said he would save the entire Minoris continent and eliminate war. That was his dream. Kiefer wondered what he meant by that. He raised his sword, and there was a great flame. A voice was heard from the flame. This king made a contract with the voice. He told the voice to take his left eyes in exchange for power, and the voice agreed. He was given a great power that could destroy the earth. The Stothel soldiers were attacked, and many of them died. As he offered, his left eye was taken. He then sent his soldiers to relay his message to Stoll that if they didn't want another attack like that, they had better surrender. His eye was used as exchange for using the sacred sword, Gluval. The soldiers told Kiefer that the king had already offered his sense of smell and his right leg as sacrifice. King Riffal said sacrificing his eyes is a small price to pay compared to many lives that would be lost if the war continue. The king invited Kiefer to join him if she wishes to save lives. Kiefer replied that she would join him someday, but not that moment. King Sion committed a mission to Cloth that he should go to Estabel and reform their army and integrate it into the Roland army. Cloth refused as it seemed like they wanted to take advantage of Princess No. The princess had overheard their conversation. She walked in and asked the king if it would be beneficial to her country as well. The king clarified that both nations are now his citizens, and this has to be done to avoid ever fighting with them again. The king reviewed how he had a friend when he was still in Roland Academy. Her name was Kiefer. Kiefer betrayed them as an Estabel spy, and many of them died. He added that Kiefer was still his dear friend despite her betrayal because he understood that she was in a helpless situation. Her older sister was killed by Roland, and her little sister was taken hostage. She was forced to become a double agent. The king said she undoubtedly cried for help in her heart many times, but he never noticed. The king vowed that as long as he was king, there would be no further war between Roland and Estabel. He asked the princess to help him, and she agreed to do anything within her power. Froaud informed the king that he would be heading to Runa Empire soon, because it seemed Duke Styrid had contact with the Runa nobility to assassinate the king, so he wanted to go there to ascertain the facts. Ryner and Ferris were in Runa Empire at the town Regit to rescue Cuckoo. They hid behind grasses to target a building surrounded by soldiers. Ferris and Ryner unexpectedly attacked the soldiers. One of the soldiers stood up again and he was attacked from behind. Then, Sui and Ku showed up. They were surprised to meet each other again. Sui said they were quite interested in Ryner, the bearer of a unique alpha stigma that was different from other alpha stigma. He added that they were also there for Arua, the boy they hid. These four began to battle again. While at that, the Runa army approached them. Ryner and Ferris then decided to split. As Ryner was leaving, Sui told him that Cuckoo, the girl they seeked, was confined in the manor of a noble, so they should meet there. Froaude was at the empire of the Runa king, but the king was absent. The princess said her father was currently ill and had left the country for convalescence. Froaude then realized that the king of Runa had betrayed his alliance with Roland and joined hands with Gastark, and that was why he couldn't meet him. Furthermore, the one in charge of the plot to assassinate Roland King was the king of Runa himself. Then he decided he would challenge the Gastark as well. Ryner was still with Arua. He became worried when he didn't see Ferris coming. He remembered how Sui tried to crystallize his alpha stigma. He then intended to crystallize Arua's alpha stigma before he began to hurt people. Arua woke up and he ran out of the carriage because he didn't know who Ryner was. Arua remembered how his parents were killed, and he wept bitterly. He accused himself that his parents died because of him. Ryner asked him to leave if he wanted and if he could be saved that way. He called himself a monster that everyone wanted to kill. Ryner showed him his eyes so he could know he was also an alpha stigma bearer. He revealed how he wished he could died at that time because his existence hurt people he loved. But on the long run, there were people who told him to be alive. That was King Sion, Kiefer, and lately Ferris, who always pick on him and called him her manservant. So he started thinking, maybe there is some meaning for him and it's okay to live. Arua said he had no one who wished him to live. Ryner reminded him of what his father said when he was about to die, and someone was waiting for him, the girl who asked him to save him, Cuckoo, and she's apparently being held captive as a bait to lure him out. Arua decided he's going to save Cuckoo. Ferris then arrived. Ryner and Ferris entered a large building. They met Sui and Ku in the building. They held Cuckoo hostage to get Arua. Sui told Ryner to offer his alpha stigma and that of Arua's to them willingly for the sake of their homeland, Gastark. Sui told them the whole world would eventually belong to Gastark, since they had an excellent king. Ryner said, since they kill people to own hero relics and didn't accept Alpha Stigma Bearer in their country, he won't believe they're good. The four of them began to fight again. This time, it was a tough one. Sui and Ku used the hero relics as their weapon. Arua attacked from outside, and then he joined Ryner and Ferris. Ku also came out with Cuckoo, their hostage. Sui said they were going to kill her since they couldn't win against them. They would kill Cuckoo and destroy Arua's sense of self. Ryner rushed towards him to save Cuckoo, but before he could get there, someone had already attacked Sui, and he was badly injured. Distracted, and Ferris quickly delivered Cuckoo from her. Frode was seen walking into the building. He picked up the hero sword relics that fell from Sui. Sui asked Ku to leave him and run away. Froaud asked if they were the one instigating Runa's action. He wanted to attack Sui again, but Ryner stopped him. It surprised Sui that Ryner could help them. Sui flew out with Ku. Froud told Ryner and Ferris that he knew they were both from Roland when he listened to their conversation. So why did they protect people of Gastark? Ryner replied him that they can't keep eliminating people. Froud wondered what the king was planning, keeping an alpha stigma bearer and searching for heroes' relics. Then he walked away. Ryner and Ferris were able to save Cuckoo and Arua at the end. Ryna sent Cuckoo and Arua to Roland. King Sion was worried because the Runa Empire was acting strange, and it rumored that there are signs of a revolution ready to happen in Nelfa. He said if things stay like that, conflict would become inevitable, even though no one wanted it. Frood reported to the king that Runa had joined hands with Gastark, though not officially. He also confirmed that they joined forces with Duke Steeride to plot the assassination of the king. He added that he was unable to meet Runa King. The king hid himself because he was threatened by the Gastark messengers. He also received information that the Gastark used strange magic. The king thought they must have discovered the heroes' relics too, and that would pose a great disaster if all the country used weapon relics against one another. King Sion went through Ryner's report again. He said he would create the world Ryner desired even without the hero's relics because that was why he became the king. The king smashed the table and the lady cleaning was scared. He apologized for scaring the lady. The lady told him that in her hometown, they were always suffering. Their lords treated them badly, and they were heavily taxed. She added that the king had been treating them well, and she was really glad working with him. Ryner and Ferris returned to the Roland Empire. They said they were going to kill Sion for giving them such a tedious task. Capitan Kalad and her squadron ran after them, and Kalad was actually afraid when he heard Ryner saying he wanted to kill the king. While on their way to King Sion, they moved forward and continued to discuss their plan on killing Sion. Captain Kalad and her squadron kept following Ryner and Ferris. Cloth came in and saw them. He asked what they were doing, and Luke, one of the squadron, moved close to him. They had knew each other a little back in the military. Luke asked why Cloth was not in Estabel as ordered by the king. Cloth told him he was there before, but there was rumors that someone was trying to assassinate Sion again, so he had to come back to check it out. Kalad became afraid knowing that Ryner and Ferris were planning to kill them king. She excused herself to go to the restroom, but then ran after Ryner and Ferris. Captain Kalad kept running until she almost caught up with them. She called out Ryner, but Ryner shouted that she get down. Kalad quickly did that. Ryner casted his magic spell on the group of men coming behind her, and one of them died. Ferris rushed to kill the remaining two. Ryner thought they must be the assassins sent to kill Sion. Kalad asked if he wasn't really planning to kill the king. Kalad then realized that he wasn't serious about it. That was really an expensive joke, and it made Kalad angry that she almost cast her spell on him. Ryner ran away. The king entered his room and a dictionary fell on him. He picked up the dictionary and found Ryner sleeping on his bed. He was deeply asleep and was snoring. Sion threw the dictionary on his face, and he woke up angrily asking if Sion wanted to kill him. He said he wanted to kill him too. Ryner said he had placed the dictionary at the door so it could kill him when he wants to enter. This got Sion laughing seriously. Who killed a fellow man with a dictionary? The two of them continued joking and playing together. Froud also got hold of Ryner's report. After reading it, he concluded that the report could break the king. Then, he decided he would eliminate Ryner. King Sion came to tell Ryner that he and Ferris would escort him to Estabel. Ryner asked him to get other people to escort him, but Sion told him he trusted him and Ferris the most. The king threatened him that if he didn't follow him, he would make him do something he hated. The king told him that Arua and Cuckoo had been sent to the house of Eris, so they would be safe. Ryner quickly jumped out of bed and said he would be going to visit Aura. Arua and Cuckoo were very happy when they saw Ryner. Iris and Ferris also joined them, and they picked on Ryner together. Ryner informed Ferris that they would be escorting the king to Estabel. Ferris suggested they return to their research for heroes' relics rather than escorting Sion because he was going to work them to the bone. They agreed they would be meeting in the front of the Dango shop. Ryner was heading back to the palace when Captain Kalad stopped her. She gave him an invitation to her birthday. She said everyone in her squadron would be holding a birthday party for her, so she wanted him to come. Ryner remembered he was leaving with Ferris the next day. She told him Luke would do all the cooking and he was the one that made the written invitations. She said she didn't remember her real birthday, but Luke and others suggested that they could take the day the squadron was first formed and make it her birthday. She told him to make sure he come for the party. Kalad was happy she was able to give the invitation to Ryner. Unfortunately, she encountered Frode on her way. When Ryner got to his room, he read the written invitations. In the content, it was written that if the Alpha Stigma bearer, Ryner, went out of control outside the country, he should be eliminated immediately. The letter was signed and sealed by King Sion. Ryner fell back to his bed, and he said Sion was right. Early the next morning, Ryner left his room without anybody knowing. Ferris waited for Ryner at the Dango shop the next morning, but he didn't show up. She went to his room to check if he had been sleeping, but he wasn't there. A guy came to inform Luke that Captain Kalad was not in her room, and it doesn't look like she's been back to her room since yesterday. They became worried because they had already prepared for the birthday party. Luke suggested she might be with Ryner. Ferris barged into King Sion court. Sion's secretary tried to stop her, but Sion asked her to leave, that she was his acquaintance. Sion asked what was wrong, and she replied that Ryner had disappeared. The king became worried, and they wondered where he might be. The king received a report from Cloth in Estabel. An alpha stigma bearer had appeared in Estabel, and he had caused a considerable amount of danger. Cloth was also able to gather Roland and Estabel forces and set out to subdue the threat. Ferris thought the alpha stigma bearer they reported was Ryner, since he was nowhere to be found. The king told her that it impossible, since Ryner's disappearance was that morning. The king ordered them to secure the alpha stigma bearer without him dying. He entrusted the search of Ryner to Ferris. Cloth was led to the point where the alpha stigma bearer used to appear in Estabel. They told him he appeared time to time in their territory, and he would attack their citizens. He had black hair and always wore black clothes. And even worse, this alpha stigma monster consumes people. Kiefer was in the library at Gastark studying a book. She read that Grenslad was the capital of the strongest city, Gastark. It was a little town, but was the capital of the so-called strongest nation of the northern continent, the one that defeated Imperial Stole. On top of that, monsters that devour people, creatures that spread destruction all over, descendants of heroes. This place is filled with record of myths and legends. This world has people with special powers, called magic eyes. These people hold different respective symbols, depending on their abilities. Ebra Crypt, which was said to look in on people's dreams. Lino Dao, which is said to devour people's lives, and the Alpha Stigma, which is said to analyze and understand all magic. Torch Curse and Wilhelm also. When Alpha Stigma bearers are born, they are no different from human children. It is said that their eyes can clearly see the truth of the world merely by looking. They read into the structures that spread through the atmosphere and instantly comprehend magical power. There are cases where something triggers them into growing out of control. They seek the truth, the erasure of all structure. Once an alpha stigma bearer goes out of control, there is no return for them. King of Gastark, Rifaladea came to her. He told her he had fallen for her and so she could use him and his country to her advantage since they had things she wanted to know. He promised he's going to bring her around one day. The alpha stigma bearer found in Estabel had killed nearly all the villagers. Cloth was taken there, and he saw him as he consumed a whole human body. Cloth ordered his soldiers to prepare large-scale magic and attack him. Strangely, the magic has no effect on him. He flew into the midst of the soldiers and consumed one of them. He ordered them to attack him again, but still he felt nothing but rather killed one of them again. Claw himself then attacked him. Again he still stood strong. He kept attacking him, but nothing happened to him. The Estabel Magic Knights also attacked him, but he consumed all their power. He flew and stood at the tip of a tree. Unknown to them, he had taken the Crimson Fingered from Cloth. When they saw it, they were shocked, and Cloth himself was shocked. He had sustained injury on that hand. He attacked the soldiers again, and slaughtered quite a number of them. Cloth said they wouldn't give up, and they should continue fighting, but one of the Estabel soldiers quickly carried him away, seeing that he would not stop. Then the soldiers retreated. Luke was still in search of Captain Kalod. In his mind, he thought he was wrong to have shown the directive to Ryner. The directive was given to Ryner as written invitations of Kalod's birthday, so he thought Ryner must have e-capped with her since they were both missing. Suddenly, he perceived that a group of people were hiding around there. He asked them to show themselves, and they came out. They told him they had Captain Kalod in their custody, and they would like him to come with them. They threatened that they would kill Captain Kalod if he didn't come with them. Luke used the magic trap on them, and he explained that they must have been sent by Frood. Truly, Frood came out of nowhere. Luke asked him where Captain Kalod was, but he told him he had a favor to ask him first. He said he'd be willing that he followed the king's order to kill Ryner. Luke told him that was none of his business. Frood attacked him, but he trapped him with his magic spell. Ryner was seen in an isolated place where no one else was. He was taking Dango. Then he remembered Ferris and assumed she would have been pissed up. A soldier came to report to King Sion that the Alpha Stigma Bearer had defeated Field Marshal Cloth. The king was shocked, thinking he had died. He added that he barely made it alive, and he sustained very serious injuries. Princess No was also disturbed when she heard it. Ryner was really sad not seeing Ryner again. Her sister Iris tried to cheer her up with Dango, but she wasn't interested. She remembered how she was able to save him when he turned to a monster, and other times they've spent together. She said her chest hurt. Her brother was seen behind her. She asked him how long he's been there, and he told her he's been watching her always, ever since she was a child. She asked if he knew anything about Ryner's disappearance. His brother replied him that he only once warned him not to make any passes at his younger sister. He said the fear of her leaving for a place far away made him feel lonely. Suddenly, he told her a visitor was around. Ferris looked back, and when she looked at her brother's direction again, he had disappeared. Asina, King Sion's secretary, rushed in and told Ferris they have learned where Ryner was. She told her he was in Estabel territory, at the former Estabel border vicinity. Inside the tower, Cloth was bedridden. Princess No bent beside him, and she was crying. Cloth asked her to stop crying since he wasn't died. Cloth said the next time he met the monster, he would surely kill him. Cloth was in real severe pain. The king came out and addressed the army. One of the soldiers asked him how he intended to handle the monster now. The king said he had a plan, that he would take up the vanguard. He said, As long as Roland has him, no monster shall have their way. The soldier's spirit of war was revived. At the former Estabel Inn, Ryner was with a map. He wasn't eating the food he was served. He was wondering what he would do. An old lady came to ask him if he was on a trip, and he answered yes. She told him there were lots of hot springs and delicious foods in the area, and there are lots of new stores opening too. The woman added that King Sion had made everywhere peaceful. Ryner was surprised when he saw Ferris walked inside the inn. Ferris brought out her sword and began to fight Ryner. Everyone in the inn rushed out and she wrecked everywhere. Ryner told Ferris that she must be another elite meant to kill him. Ferris couldn't understand that he meant. She asked him over and over again, but he didn't respond. The black-haired alpha stigma came in and smiled at Ryner, saying he found him. The monster kept staring at Ryner and said everything Laffer said about him was right. He moved closer to them, and they began to fight. The monster got hold of the both of them. While at that, he introduced himself as Tyr Rumibul, a bearer of the divine eyes, Lino Do. He said he had come for Ryner. He said his friend learned of him in a dream and saw how his heart was wounded and was weeping. Suddenly, an arrow pierced his back. Ryner and Ferris quickly rush out. Countless arrows were shot towards the building. Tyr, the monster, came out. He was struck with many arrows. He fiercely jumped on one of the soldiers, and he slaughtered him. T called Ryner his friend, and everyone was surprised. He also made everyone knew about him being an alpha stigma bearer. Everyone called him Monster. Tyr tried to be friendly with Ryner, but the king told him Ryner was not like him. Tyr asked Ryner to come along with him. Ferris asked him not to listen to Tyr. He continued to persuade Ryner to follow him, that he had many friends. Ryner told Sion he had tried for him, and he told him he saw the letter given to Luke. Sion told him the letter didn't meant what he took it to be. Ryner decided to leave with Tyr. Ferris tried to stop him, but they flew into the sky. Ferris looked so sad. The king and the soldiers jubilated about the victory. Tyr and Ryner appeared in a strange place far above the earth. Tyr asked Ryner if he wanted to return, but he said no. Ryner followed Tyr. Field Marshal Cloth had been defeated by the alpha stigma bearer, Tyr, who was a monster. He sustained very serious injuries and was bedridden. Ryner left the Empire without anybody knowing his whereabout. Ferris waited for him at the Dango shop, but he didn't show up. Then she received information that he was in Estabel. Ferris went there and she saw him. King Sion had to take up the vanguard since Cloth was down. He led them to battle with the monster. The monster appeared in the same place where Ferris found Ryner, and he attacked them. When the monster named Tyr Rumibul saw that Ryner was an alpha stigma bearer, he persuaded him to come along with him to his place where he had many friends, and where Ryner would feel belonged to. Ryner agreed to go with him, and he left Ferris and Sion. He told them they had tried keeping him all these years. Ferris felt really troubled when Ryner left her. At the capital of Gastark Treasure Repository, Lise, one of the king's messenger and warrior, reported to the king of Gastark, Riffaladia, that all bearers of magic eyes all across the continent were gathering, and it appeared that they were forming anti-Gastark movement. Kiefer came in and said she saw pretty jewelries there that caught her eyes. The king told her the jewelries there won't look good on her. He promised he would buy him whatever she likes if she wouldn't mind. Kiefer said she had no reason to accept anything from him, and then she walked away. Ryner was walking behind Tyr. At some point, he waited and looked behind. Tyr asked if he was having a second thought, but he said no. Explained to him that they are not human, but bearer of magic eyes. He told him he must understand that they cannot coexist with humans no matter what, and he needed not to agonize over it as their friends were waiting for them. Ryner looked behind again. Ferris was still pissed over Ryner's disappearance. She couldn't even take her favorite sweet, Dango. She remembered the times they had spent together while searching for heroes' relics. Then she muttered that it was dull being alone. She remembered how Ryner left with Tyr, and how Tyr had mentioned them meeting their friends. Ferris wondered if she wasn't his friend too. She left the Dango shop in annoyance, leaving behind her luggage. The elders questioned the king for keeping an alpha stigma bearer in the country, when he knew how destructive they could be. The king explained that the alpha stigma was an existence which holds incredible magical power. In the era of the previous king, Ryner had underwent special training and was referred to as Roland's most powerful magician, meaning that alpha stigma, when put into proper use, can be of great military aid. He added that he appointed the Taboo Breaker Pursuit Squadron to monitor his movements, with orders to kill him at the spot if he go out of control. He said it was all for the good of the country. The elders commended the king's wisdom. The king of Gastark proposed to the nobles that he would be getting married to Kiefer, but Lise objected it. Kiefer came in beautiful dress. She asked them what was going on. Sui told her he utterly refused his king getting married to her. Kiefer, the bride-to-be, was shocked she wasn't even aware of that. But Kiefer asked for her clothes. The king insisted he would be getting married to Kiefer. Kiefer refused to accept his proposal. Suddenly, they heard someone shout for help from outside. They all rushed out and found Sui lying on the ground while Ku was crying because he was badly injured. Ku was knocked out and she lost consciousness. Kiefer in her mind was amazed at how strong the country was. Its servant gladly cast away their lives for their king, and their king sacrificed his own body to progress forward. Sui told the king that they encountered a man using the lightning beast ring, same as Brother Lear's. Brother Lear was another warrior from Gastark, but he didn't know the country where he came from. He said that, in Roland, they had a monster named Ryner who was lending them power. Lies noticed Kiefer's reaction when Ryner's name was mentioned. Then Lies told the king that Kiefer appeared to be familiar with Ryner's name. Kiefer got scared. Ryner refused to take the dango sweet he was served. Tyr asked if it was hard for him to accept that he was not human. He told Ryner that his own magic eyes was different from Ryner's own. His own magic eyes was called Lino Du. The timing of these eyes opening occurs before one is born while in the human woman's stomach. Then there is a voice that only the bearer could hear. The voice would command him to devour humans. Tyr added that they had power far beyond humans, so they should exist separately. All this while, Brother Lear, a messenger from Gastark and the one who possessed the same weapon as Froode, had been listening to their conversation. Cloth received a report about Ryner being an alpha stigma bearer, and King Sion had been keeping him on a leash. Ryner's alpha stigma was an unusual type because it returned back to normal after getting out of control. Cloth knew something about Ryner, and he narrated that his real name, actual age, birthplace, and everything else were unclear. At an age presumed to be 5, he was taken to a bandit village where they discovered he had an alpha stigma, and he was taken into military custody. At Germer Kleisroll Training Institute, he underwent combat training, and after that, he was sent to Roland Special Training Institute, #307. He underwent the deadliest of training, and then placed in a Roland military secret organization. Ryner was dubbed to be Roland's strongest magician. Sion met him at Royal Special Academy. Ryner and Tyr arrived at Tyr's lodge. A little boy came out to welcome them, then other kids joined him. They sat and were served drinks by a girl. Ryner was surprised to see the kids. Tyr told him all the kids bore the magic eyes, and they were chased away by human and hunted down. Tyr flashed back to when Brother Lear and Ku from Gastark attacked them. Tyr couldn't consume the lightning beast from Lear's magic, and then he fell off. Ku told him not to kill Tyr so he could be able to steal his crystal. Lise, who also came with them, commented that this would be their 76th monster extermination, and 8 people were killed. Tyr told Ryner that these attackers were from Gastark, and he vowed to make them pay for meddling with them. The children came to meet Tyr that they were hungry. Tyr revealed to Ryner that he wanted to protect the children and create a world where they could live with a smile. The children came to meet Ryner and asked him the special technique he possessed. He answered that he possessed afternoon naps. The children commented that he was useless. A lady joined the scene. The children called her Lafra to her that he actually found Ryner in Estabel Inn like she told him. Lafra explained to Ryner that her own magic eyes called Ebra Crypt had the ability to replace the dreams in her head with those of other people. Basically, it's a power that resonate with people's dreams and allows her to see inside them. Ryner asked if she could see his dreams too. He replied that he had been watching him for quite a long time, and she saw everything he had endured, how kind he was, and how he earnestly desired to protect those dear to him. Even though he was a monster, he wanted more and more to mingle with people. She remarked that he was special, and that was why she didn't tell anyone about him at first. But he closely watched him all these while, and concluded he would be the one to save all the magic eyes bearer in the continent who had lost faith in humans, including him. Ryner refused to accept the fact that they were monsters different from humans. He assumed they should be able to get along with humans because nothing seemed different at all. He remembered everything people had said to him, then he felt worried. When he remembered Lafra told him he would save other magic eyes bearer, he wondered what was there to gain in saving them. Ryner noticed something and then went out. Ryner, on getting outside, asked that the person hiding should come out. Brother Lear was hiding behind the grasses, but Luke from the Taboo Breaker Squadron was the one that confronted him. He told him he had come to dispose him according to King Sion's order. The day Luke met with Froode, and he revealed Captain Callod was in his custody, was seen again. Froode had pleaded with Luke to execute the king's order to dispose Ryner. Luke respectfully declined. He then warned him not to lay a finger on Captain Callod, because if he did that, he would kill him at the spot. Froode said he understood, and he would release Captain Callod. Luke told him he would keep his life in his hand until he ascertained Captain Callod's well-being. Froode asked if the weapon Luke was holding was a hero relic. He told him he picked something that Ryner forgot to recover. The weapon looked like a needle, and thread can extend infinitely, and are durable to the point that they cannot be cut. Froode asked Luke if Ryner's existence was truly necessary, but he said Ryner's dream of having a peaceful world where no one dies or cries was wonderful, but it was an illusion. Back to where Luke and Ryner were. Luke attacked Ryner. He said Ryner was not supposed to be by the king's side. He added that he would kill him according to his own will, even though he knew Captain Callod would grieve if he did. Seeing that Luke was determined to kill Ryner, Brother Lear left where he was hiding. Tyr woke Lafra up and informed her that something was wrong. Luke continued battling with Ryner. They used magic spell against each other, and everywhere went dark. Luke was at the point of striking him with the hero relic needle when Ferris unexpectedly came to rescue him, and she stood on him. Ferris had tailed Luke when he was going to meet Ryner. Tyr's lodge suddenly exploded, The kids hid behind Tyr, but he told them to run away because he was badly injured already. Lear was the one that attacked him, and he had the lightning beast ready to attack him. Tyr seemed defeated this time. Ferris and Ryner ran towards them, but met Lafra and the kids on their way. Lafra was about explaining what about when a sudden explosion bursted out and the lightning beast attacked them. Sadly, Lafra was killed, but the kids escaped. One of the kids with Stigma Bearer wanted to transform to a monster. Ryner tried to stop him. Then they saw brother Lear. Lear gouged out the crystal of the girl with Alpha Stigma, using another hero relic called Spunkle. The girl was struck and she died immediately. Liu asked the rest of the kids to also turn to monster, so he could gouge out their Alpha Stigma too. Ryner couldn't hold it anymore. He remembered when he had spent time with the kids and his conversation with Lafra. He gathered his magic spell, and he had become so furious. He attacked Liu, but Leo attacked him with the lightning beast. Ryner slayed the beasts with her sword. Tyr tried to attack him from behind, but he raised the Spunkle up against him and he fell back. Ryner's eyes had turned black. He vowed he's going to kill Liu. He ran towards him, and Liu kept sending lightning beasts to him. He dodged all. Ferris ran into the middle of the magic and stopped the lightning beasts with her sword. Suddenly, there was an explosion, quickly moved Ryner away from it. Ferris with her sword kept slaying the lightning beasts. Ferris was defeated by the lightning beast. She lost her sword and fell off to the ground and lost her consciousness. Leo tried to crystallize Ryner's Alpha Stigma. He suddenly began to turn to a monster. He remembered how Sui had wanted to crystallize him back then too. Began to echo in Ryner's head, telling him to destroy everything that nothing matters. Ryner struggled with it, this desire to destroy everything. He almost sank inside it, but he kept struggling, remembering Ferris, his partner, and how he wanted to protect his loved ones. Suddenly, the Spunkle in Liu's hand broke, and Ryner was able to stop the crystallization. He didn't turn to a monster, nor did he die as expected by Liu. This really amazed Liu, and he wondered who he was. Luke brought out the Lestel thread, the hero relic weapon, with him. Luke vowed he was going to deliver Liu's head to Gastark. Tyr regained consciousness. Ryner told him he would hold Liu off, so he should leave with the children. Liu told Ryner there was something called All Formula, and he would be using it on him. Ryner seemed not to understand what he meant, but Liu just walked away. Luke told Ryner Ferris would wake up anytime soon, since all she had was just a light concussion. True to Luke's word, Ferris woke up and picked up her sword again. Ferris told Ryner how the king felt when he left. Ryner explained that he had to run away because he was afraid of being hurt or hurting others. He then decided he would go back to Roland and he won't run away anymore. He informed Ferris that he might be using his Alpha Stigma power since Gastark was getting dangerous. He begged Ferris to kill him if he gets out of control again. He would love to be killed by her. Ryner opened the door of Sion's court. He opened his mouth when he saw piles of files Sion would attend to. Sion told Ryner he had been waiting for him to come back. Sion teased Ryner by telling him he would not sleep until the mountain of documents is properly handled. He told Ferris that she was going to help out too. Both of them tried to run away as they were not willing to offer him a hand. The door shut itself. Sion said it won't open, so they should get right to work. King Sion was glad that the both of them came back, whereas Frood was behind the door listening to their conversation. Captain Khalud was finally awake. She asked where she was. Then she suddenly remembered her last encounter with Frood. She asked Luke why Frood was after her. Luke assured her that it was over now and needed not to worry, but Captain Khalud sensed that they were hiding something from her. Lord Clough decided he was leaving the hospital so he could get accustomed to his new arm. Princess No was worried, thinking he might not be fine yet. Froud approached King Sion and asked if he wanted to keep Ryner alive. Sion told him he wanted him to die in Luke's hand, but indirectly he would be the one that killed him. Froud told him that keeping him alive would not be good for him. Froud had told him he would accept the punished for killing Ryner, but the king had already decided that he would keep Ryner alive no matter what. Someone suddenly appeared to Ryner on his way out of the court. He stabbed him with a knife, and Ryner fell off. The strange man Ryner met on his way after he had stabbed him. Ryner fell down and lost consciousness immediately. Lucille appeared behind him, and he mentioned the man's name as Duke Lyral Leotolu, the ghost who escaped death and haunts Roland. Lucille told Duke Lyral that Ryner had not yet reached the point where it's safe for him to view the door. Lyral brought out a chain with crystal pendant, which was also a hero relic called Sipuemus. He threw it up and light shone round him. He commanded it to break into pieces, and then the light became brighter. Lucille disappeared, and Lyral carried Ryner away. Ferris, the king, and Froud were also watching this event. Flashback to when Sion first met Lucille Eris, when he was yet to be king, was revealed. Lucille asked Sion to follow him, and they entered a certain room. Suddenly, Sion's mind was being controlled. He said he would kill anyone who stood against him, and for that he would accept anything, even the devil. Lucille, on hearing that, affirmed that Sion could now become his master, and master of his sword. He opened another door, and there he met another person that looked exactly like him. Sion's mind was splitted into two. One was being controlled by Sion, while the other by darkness, asking him to destroy the world. Ferris traveled in the air to go meet Duke Lyral, who had Ryner with him. Ferris stopped him, and asked him what he did to Ryner. Lyral put Ryner down. Confronted by Ferris, she slayed him, but strangely he dissolved and appeared again behind her. Lyral said he had killed Ryner by stabbing him in the chest with a knife. On hearing this, Ferris cried bitterly. Ferris tried striking Lyral again, but he gave her a punch in her stomach. Ferris and Ryner lie down helplessly on the ground. According to a narrator, a human experiment, a robot made like human to acquire magic and could fight in battles. According to report, one of them had fled the experiment facility while out of control. It's Mao, a taboo breaker who had been bestowed with forbidden magic. Captain Kalod said human experiment had been banned when King Sion ascended the throne. The human experiment attacked her, but he was able to protect herself. Luke told her they were given orders to eliminate it, and so the taboo breaker was killed. Kalod asked if the king knew about it. Luke told her that the human experiment was carried out at the king's instructions. Kalod asked if the king was sane, then Luke told her he was in control of himself. He resumed the human experiment because it was necessary. Kalod knew at that time that they have been hiding that from her actually. Ryner woke up in a room and was shocked to see Ferris beside him. Ferris woke up too. Sion's mind was splitted again. His mind, controlled by darkness, told the other mind that he wouldn't be able to save Ryner, but he insisted he was going to save him no matter what. When he left that room, he met Lucille outside. Lucille asked him which side won, and he just smiled. Ryner and Ferris had fought and wrecked the room they were. Ryner saw a mark on his chest, and he wondered what it was. Suddenly, they heard a knock at the door. Ryner and Ferris complained they were tired of helping Sion out with the documents. They had been working for 4 days non-stop. Ryner's eyes had turned black from lack of sleep. He fell off the chair and complained he was tired. King Sion entered and gave them another task. The king told them his birthday would be coming up. Frode received a report that there would be quiz contest concerning torture and punishment in the Roland Empire. It was said that if they could spread understanding of how harshly the nation punishes those who commit crimes, it could lead to reduction in crime rates. This would be one of the event at the king's birthday. Ryner and Kalod talked about Sion's birthday celebration. Suddenly he remembered Kalod had invited him to her birthday party some days again, and he had failed to attend. He apologized for ditching her birthday, but Kalod was rather happy that he at least remembered. Then, she explained that a lot happened, and so she wasn't able to have a party. It was late, so Kalod left him feeling excited. Cloth, Princess No, and other court attendants planned on how to make the king birthday celebration exceptional. They wanted to make it look like a festival. Cloth asked Princess No how festival was being celebrated in Estabel. Princess No said, there used to be a lot of fireworks when they held their festival. At last, they decided to make fireworks the main event of the day. Cloth thought about who could do the job. Cloth and others came to meet with Ryner in the Dango shop. Cloth told Ryner that they had a job for him. Several days later, Sion was in a carriage trying to run away. The carriage was attacked, and then it overthrew. Ryner came to him and asked why he was running off. Ferris also came and asked Ryner to take him and go. Other members of the court also appeared. They moved close to him and carried him and moved him back to the castle they left Ryner and Ferris behind. Everyone in the nation had gathered in front of the court to celebrate King Sion's birthday. Cloth walked closer to him and told him to ignite the fireworks they had prepared for him. Eslina, her secretary, asked him to fire an Izuchi in the direction of the small light at the mountain. Sion did that, and the fireworks fired up immediately. The Taboo Breaker Squadron unit also celebrate Captain Kalod's birthday. Ferris came in with a beautiful cake as a present to her. She also light up fireworks. Captain Kalod was quite excited. Ryner had been the one firing the fireworks off on the mountain. The king ordered one of his servants to prepare a carriage that he had to pick someone up and he would be going alone. It began to rain. Ryner, who had been on the mountain alone, decided to get back quickly. He sighted a carriage coming towards his direction. King Sion had come to pick him up. He entered the carriage and Ryner appreciated him. King Sion told him he wanted to stop off at a place. Sion took Ryner to the place where he promised him he would become a king and change the world when they were at the Royal Academy. Ryner told him he needed to sleep because he had been working for 10 days non-stop. The king promised to send him a carriage in the next 3 hours. Ryner objected, saying he should come back after 300 hours. Ryner advised him to get some sleep too. King Sion said he can't because he's yet to completely change the country. Ryner called him a workaholic. Ryner apologized to Sion for not believing him when he first promised to be a king and change the world. He thought what he said back then were just empty dreams. He told him the country had really changed, and he had created a world where everyone can live with a smile. Sion said it was an empty dreams because many of their friends died while he was trying to create that world. Ryner had to encourage him to stop blaming and punishing himself for that, and assured him that the country would just be fine if he take things easy. King Sion began to fight with Ryner while it was raining. They fought against each other fiercely. According to a narrator, the black hero who fought against the whole world finally broke down. The black hero was sealed away far to the south by the powerful beings who protected the world. But another monster lived in that region, the Lonesome Devil, hideous and ever so lonely that he almost died. He asked a human to give him his body, and he obliged. The devil called All Formula was split into the solver of all formulas and weavers of all formulas, and the hero devoured the weavers of all formulas on the spot. The hero broke the world and broke it even more until he finally reached the world core where he found darkness and hell. He called for help, then he told the devil that he can use the rest of his body. The Lonesome Devil had been borrowing the body of heroes that sit on the throne, and Sion struggled hard to fight this, because it always wanted to push him to do something out of his will. No one knew about this except Lucille from Eris' house. Ryner wondered why Sion was fighting him. Sion was crying, but he couldn't help himself because the devil had taken control of his body. Ryner asked if he was going to kill him, and he answered yes. Ryner told him he wouldn't let him kill him, because he had already decided who would kill him, and that was Ferris. But he said he still considers Sion as his best friend. The human experiments came out from the underground and began to fight Ryner. Ryner couldn't believe that Sion had been planning such things all this while, without them knowing. Sion told him it was necessary for him to made them. Ryner then realized that Sion had been overwhelmed by darkness and had lost control of himself. Sion insisted he must kill Ryner. Ryner tried to say some pacifying words to bring him back to his normal self, but it wasn't working. But Sion was crying strongly. The devil controlled Sion and he sent forth dark swords to Ryner which pierced his whole body. He strangled his neck and promised to send him to hell. The spirit of a little girl whose body emit light suddenly came out of Ryner's body and told Sion it's not yet time. Lucille Eris appeared behind him and she addressed him as weaver of all formulas. Lucille was a part the devil splitted too. The spirit told him to stop Sion and release Ryner because he would destroy everything and everyone. Lucille confirmed that Sion would never lose his sanity because he was different. He told Ryner Sion was going to betray him one day, when the devil completely have his mind, but till then he should enjoy his friendship with him. He touched Ryner's head and he lost his consciousness. Sion pointed a sword at Sion's neck while he was lying unconsciously. He struggled with the sword, and the voice kept telling him to kill Ryner. He struggled so hard with the spirit, then his sword fell off his hand. Another image of Sion appeared and they began to converse. One was Sion's mind himself, while the other was Sion's mind controlled by darkness. Sion was able to overcome his mind controlled by darkness at that moment, and he left Ryner lying helplessly on the ground. Ryner woke up in the prison with his head bandaged. He had been badly injured by Sion. Ferris entered the prison. The prison guard tried to stop her, but he defeated them. He stood up and called out the prison guard, but no one answered. Ferris suddenly appeared behind him. She let herself in by breaking the roof of the cell. Ryner was damn shocked when he saw her. She hugged him and said that she thought he was died. She cried saying Sion also confirmed it, that he was died, but she didn't believe. Ryner asked if she saw Sion. Ferris told him something wasn't right about Sion, because he said he had killed him, and he smiled while looking like he was going to cry. Ferris added that Sion told her not to come back, nor associate with him again. Sion had marched the army into Imperial Nelfa. He's spearheading the army with forbidden techniques and slaughtering all the people of Nelfa. Sion and Ferris ran out of the prison. Ryner said they would look for a way to stop Sion, and found out what was happening and then revealed the truth. Suddenly the earth quaked behind them. They looked back and saw Kiefer. She ran away as some men were pursuing her. Ryner and Ferris left in a carriage. In the carriage, Ryner in his mind reviewed how he had given up and wanted to dead, but Sion saved him, and he had always been grateful for that. The battle between Roland and Nelfa was seen. Everyone was involved in this battle, including the Taboo Breaker Squadron. Ryner vowed he would save Sion no matter what he was involved in. He would protect him. Then, he would made him say he had the best friend ever. This brings us to the end of this amazing anime. What do you think about Ryner and Sion friendship? Drop your comment at the comment section, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Bye-bye.